So John's Gospel, chapter 4, starting at verse 5. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water, welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." Amen.
Amen. Amen. So we've been in a series going through the Gospel of John. We won't get through all of it, and we're going to finish at Easter, around about the end of chapter 5. There's lots more chapters in John, and then there'll be something we'll be doing after Easter. Chapters 1 to 4, myself and the rest of our preaching team, we've been making this wonderful exploration through the Gospel of John. And out of the 4 Gospels, John is very different than Matthew, Mark and Luke. And it's a lot more personal. The others are very action-oriented. The Gospel of John is very personal. It's written by John, one of the disciples, and had a very close relationship with Jesus. And we see a much more intimate and up-close and personal, behind-the-scenes picture of who Jesus is. And we've been going through chapters 1 to 4. We're getting into chapter 4 today. And those early chapters really explain who Jesus was. And in particular, we arrive at John 3:16. We did this a couple of weeks ago. And a well-known verse where Jesus is with Nicodemus. And Jesus says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him won't die but have eternal life." Jesus' self-disclosure that he's not just a good person, but he is God's son himself. And we get to this very personal interaction today. I mean, the story of Nicodemus is very personal. But here is an ordinary person, a bit like you and I, minding our own business. There's a much bigger story about being a Samaritan in the well, and we haven't got time for that today. But I did wonder, preparing for today, what was that like? And Jesus happens to stumble into this story. I don't know what your daily life looks like or your work life looks like, but imagine if, some teachers caught my eye. Just as you're about to prepare a lesson and you happen to stumble into Jesus, or you're filling your car with petrol and Jesus just happened to, be there in that moment and engages in a conversation with you. And what we can gather in this story, Jesus is thirsty, he's traveling, and he just stumbles upon this woman, an ordinary person like you and I, and he has this amazing conversation with her, because Jesus, as the Son of God, seemed to have amazing conversations with everybody he stumbled into. And we're going to see very, very briefly this morning that in this wonderful personal interaction for this lady, that Jesus gives this lady a wonderful explanation about who he is and what he wants to do in her life. But also it's here in Scripture, and it's in this gospel in the Bible, because it's there to inspire us about what Jesus wants to do in our life. And you may have stumbled in here today, but Jesus wants to bump into your life and tell you the same. And what we're going to look at is 3 things. 3 things, there's so much in here, but 3 things from Jesus. The first one is an explanation. Jesus explains why we should go to him. And the punchline to this is because we are thirsty for things in life, and Jesus has a response for us. He has something for us out of everything we want in life. And the second thing is the offer. Jesus says, okay, here's the explanation about why you should be thinking about who I am and engaging with me. But the second thing he does is, here are the benefits of what happens if you engage with me. Here is what will come into your life if, more than just bumping into you at this well today, or filling the petrol station, or wherever we are, or here on a Sunday, what might come into your life if we carry on together after this chance encounter? And then the third thing, the most challenging of all, and it's a challenge from Jesus. Jesus presents a challenge, and he says, and if you like the idea of who I am, and you like the idea of the benefits of me in your life, there is a challenge as to how that happens day to day, how you can only get this from me and not draw on your own well. So that's just a quick high-level summary, and we're going to go through these three things. Now, this story functions as a metaphor. I mean, we can see that in the story. There's a woman and the water, and Jesus asks for a drink of water, and Jesus says, I am living water. And then there's this story that happens, and Jesus is using this story. The metaphor is about him. So it's a metaphor and a story, but it's also more than that. Jesus is at pains in this story to say, this isn't just a story. This is how life itself is. And this metaphors are powerful because we all go through life trying to make sense and meaning. And Jesus says, if you get this idea of life as water and source and well, and me as living water, there's something amazing available to you. So it's a metaphor, but it's about what life is. So we might pause before we go into these three things and say, what's flowing into your life now? Anybody got good things springing up in their life? Anybody had some difficult things springing up in their life this week? Some challenges? You know, things come from somewhere. You think, have you ever said to yourself, how did I end up here? I just turned 50. I find myself going, how did that happen? How did I get here? It took 50 years to get here. But you're like, there was a process of going from there to here. It's like, how did that happen? You know, we get to stages in our life and think, how did I get here? How did the things that are in my life end up being in my life? And that's underneath this story, what's flowing in our lives. And if we were to pause, and the power of the story, because of who Jesus is and what he does, is inviting us to say, look at the source of your life. What's it bringing you? And he's offering us a change. He's offering to be the source of life itself. So these three things. Jesus explains. All of us have desires for life, don't we? About meaning and purpose and happiness and experiences and what life might be or should be or we want it to be or wish it wasn't. And there is something in us that measures life and all of those things and looks forward to things or has given up looking forward to things or is resigned to things. You know that bit of us that measures life? Is life good? Is it bad? Is it what I wanted? Is it what I expected? One of the ones, if you live around the London area, is, will it ever be possible to not be tired and busy? Maybe when I'm dead. You know, that compression of life. It's the one I hear all the time for anyone that lives around this area. Just relentless tiredness and busyness, the grind of the life and the complexity of it. And we have deep expectations for life in our identity. Some of the things that we really wanted to happen in life haven't happened, or they didn't turn out the way that we wanted them to be. Some things have been met, some have not. Some of us are much earlier on in that journey looking around here in life, and some of us are a lot further on in that journey and measuring of life. And there might be lots of things that we're grateful for about our lives, and there might be lots of things that we are less grateful for, that we've been hurt by, disappointed by. But I'm just dwelling there for a moment because inside us, wherever that is, in our heart and our soul, our spirits, our minds, there is a place where we measure and make an assessment of where we're at in life and where we wish we were and where we want to be. Is this making any sense? There's just that measure of life. There's something that goes on inside us. That's the place that Jesus is speaking about in this story. The source of who we are, where we do that reflecting and deciding and measuring and gratefulness and disappointment. And as a pastor, I've been pastor of this church 22 years since it started. There seems to be, when I talk with people or for myself, 4 things that we use to make measurements for life and assessments about how they're going. The first one is our circumstances. If we had different opportunities or more opportunities, if we had resources that we don't have, if we had more resources. And one of the things that I found as a pastor, that I spend time with people who I consider to be far richer than me, and I found that the richest, by the way, I used to be a financial advisor in my previous life and had clients who were multimillionaires. They were really unhappy, many of them. More money didn't make them happy. They still had difficult marriages and stresses with their children and worked too hard. You see, we can think if I had more of something, then I'd be. That's our circumstances, opportunities. If my parents had been different, if I was taller, shorter, smarter, younger, had hair. Like, hair was amazingly modelled by these children in the dedication this morning. Very envious of this hair. But what happens is, and Jesus would be saying to us, that more of those, some of us know this already, more of something does not get rid of that thirst. It's one of the strangest things about human beings. We will keep on. I read a statistic the other day that 71% of people who win the lottery end up bankrupt. You'd think, how's that possible? Because at that place where they think if I had more, and it goes there and it destroys them. Just gets out of control. Give it all away, friends take it, buy things they don't need. It's never enough. Or another thing we might do is assess ourselves, the choices that we make. Have you ever thought that was a really stupid thing? Wish I hadn't done that. Or I wish I had done that. Regrets. We assess ourselves and our successes and failures, and we put the blame on ourselves or wish we were doing different things. So one is about other people and circumstances. The other one is ourselves. And then the third one that we often navigate to for making assessment of life, in particular, is other people. What they did to us. What my boss is like. What this person was. It's their fault. And the fourth one, maybe we blame God. I didn't ask to be born at this time in history and be here at this place. I didn't ask for this. Maybe some of us just think we're your randomness and chance. Or maybe some of us wish we'd been born at a different time. With everything going on in the news at the minute, we might sometimes wish we'd been born at a different time and a different place. And God, why did you do that? Why now? And some of us may hardly ever think about God. Some of us may be very close to God. Some of us may blame God for our situation and our circumstances. So all of those, just sharing those, because those are the conversations that I have with people, and I know, I'm guessing you do, about life. Every conversation that you have about how is life going will usually gravitate around those things. And that's the space that Jesus is speaking to. And Jesus explains something here. Well, let me put it this way. As a pastor, just as a human being, I have found that the things that I want and you want in your life can become the very things that end up killing life in us itself. What do I mean by that? I spent time with people, doesn't happen so much because I'm getting old, but when I was younger, people who said, I wish I wasn't single. A deep longing to not be single. And then a few years later, I'm sitting with them saying, I'm really struggling now, I'm not single. It's called marriage. And I'm like, there's the irony there. Don't want to be single, now I am. Oh, gosh, now this is another struggle. And then the struggle of marriage. And then you can guess where this is going. And then I talk with people that are like, want kids. Can we afford to have kids and never have kids? And some people struggle to have kids. And then they get kids. And it's amazing for a bit. But it doesn't take long before it's, I'm not coping. I could do with a bit less children in my life. And then one day we look forward to when they might grow up and leave the nest and move into life. And then suddenly some of us find it really hard when they do grow up and leave because we're not sure who we are. We thought we'd be enjoying this stage. You see, whatever we want to bring into the source of our life can often become the very thing that gives us the next problems that we have in life. And this is what Jesus is saying. He's saying, this is the problem of human life itself, and I have come to speak to that place. For this woman in the middle of a dry, sunny day with a very big backstory about who she was. Some of you know the rest of the story. She'd had 5 previous husbands and was struggling with life, and she was collecting water at the time of day when no one should be collecting water. And Jesus says, I know how difficult your life is, and I've come to that place. I've come to that place. Second thing, Jesus makes an offer. And in the metaphor and the story, if you drink this water, the things that you want for life, you'll never get thirsty again. The things that you plug into life thinking, if I have that, then I'll not be thirsty anymore and I'll be happy. And then you get disappointed again. If you stop doing that, if you plug me into that place, you won't be thirsty again. If we let Jesus be the source of life itself, if we let him be the measure for meaning and purpose. And I think we know this source of life issues ourselves, because has anybody put their work first in a season thinking, I've really got to focus on my job for my family? And then you find yourself thinking, this job is killing me and my family. Some of us put our families first, and we get to a point where thinking, the needs of my family are killing me. See, Jesus warns us that the really good things, if we can put them there, but there needs to be something underneath them. And ultimately, Jesus wants to make this offer to us. In that place and space where we're worried about life. By the way, anybody here got any worries at the minute? Anybody watching the news at the minute? What's going to happen? And Jesus says, we can plug lots of things into there, but he says, if you plug me in there, he has something to offer us to attend to that place that no one else can bring. He has the best life for us, the best work for us, the best relationships for us, the best place for us to live. And in fact, he says, you could be living anywhere in the world. You can even be living in Sutton. I'm from Luton. And, yeah. So, you know, Cheam, Banstead, Sutton, it's a bit of a step up, isn't it? And only someone from Luton can say that. But I don't remember anyone saying, one day when I grow up, I want to live in Sutton. You know, we all have aspirations for life. Jesus says he can free us from all of those. He says we could be living anywhere. We could be in Sutton, we could be in Luton, we could be in Africa, we could be in Christchurch, in New Zealand, with everything that they're facing. And I've got many Christian friends there. So we could be anywhere and still have life itself. The explanation and the offer. Sounds good, doesn't it? And Jesus says, but there's a challenge. There's a way to experience what he has for us. And the biggest challenge is this. We cannot use him as a means to an end. He is not a resource to get us what we think is important in life. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, Jesus tells us, and he's telling this lady, he says, he doesn't say, I am the way to get more living water, does he? What does Jesus say? Jesus says, you know that stuff that you want in life, come to me and I'll get you more of it. Jesus doesn't say that. Jesus says, you know underneath everything you desperately want for life, that thing that you're looking for, I am it. He doesn't say, I can get you the things that you think are it. Are you with me? He says, I'm it. I'm everything you've been looking for. Every hope that you have for your work, every aspiration for your identity and family and experiences, I am that and more. And he is not a magic genie to rub and give 3 wishes to for parking spaces. He is not someone who says, well, you could follow Oprah, but follow me and I'll get you more than Oprah gets you. Jesus says, I am the source of life. And this, if ever, this has been a challenge for humans in history, but at our time in history, we live in a world that trains us constantly to use everyone and everything to our own ends to get what we want. It's called instrumentalizing. We take everything in life and we use it to get my needs met. And Jesus says this is core to our problem. It's why there is no source of life for many of us in that place and that space. So let me unpack that to finish what I mean by I think we know this dynamic in everyday life. You see, it's one thing to want a family. It's another thing for our family to be our meaning and purpose in life, and for them to center around who we are and our needs. And what do I mean by that? I get to see that a lot as a pastor. And what happens is a great thirst in the rest of our families. If our family exists to keep us happy, some of us grew up in families like that. You were a family and you might have loved the people that were in it, but there was someone in it and it was all about them. Or we can, in a family, create family. We can do the things that are the source of family life instead of expecting our family to do them all for us. We can stop using our family and be the source of our family. Think about the best family members that you know. I bet you they're not the ones that expect the most from you. I bet you the best people in your family are the people who bring family to you and to others. Don't they? Best person in my family was my grandmother. She was the one person who never seemed to want anything from me. Family. The other thing, here's another example. Marriage, spouses, partners. And it's if you're in a relationship with a partner, you have needs that need to be met. You both do. That's the purpose of marriage, to meet each other's needs. But when a relationship can go very wrong, and I spent a lot of time pastoring with people in having challenges in their relationships, when the focus is all about what I'm not getting for what I need. Whereas the opposite way around that makes a healthy marriage is when two people decide, I'm going to meet your needs and you're going to meet my needs. I'm going to make this marriage. That makes a healthy marriage. And it means we change something about the source of the relationships. And boy, is it hard to become that. It is hard to be the source of life for other people. It's hard in a job that we have that once we were desperate for and now we think we can't wait to get out of, to turn up and be the things for other people that we want. My boss is a pain in the backside. The people that I work with, I can't stand them. Something inside us to be different at work, different in our families, different in our relationships. Something inside us has to die to be the source of life for others. We know that in our everyday life. And Jesus speaks to that place, in the place where something has to die for others to come to life. And he did this supremely for us. In fact, Easter's coming up in the Christian calendar, and we'll be celebrating this Easter. Jesus doesn't just tell this story, but Jesus ultimately puts you and I at the center of his life, and as a result of that, he dies. We might wonder, what's this thing about why did Jesus die? Why did he have to die? Have any of you felt like life is killing you? There's a lot of people nodding right now. Your work, your family, your health, your worries. What we believe as Christians is that Jesus took everything that is killing you, everything, including death itself, and he took all of that. Let me express it this way. How many of you have watched friends struggle in life? And haven't you thought, I wish I could take away from them some of their pain, some of the hurt, some of the disappointment? Have you felt that for friends and family? I wish I could take that in here. And what Jesus does, Jesus says, I'm going to go to that place for every human being that's ever existed, and I'm going to take that upon myself as God's son. What do you think that would do to you if you did that? Kill you, wouldn't it? And it killed Jesus. That's why he died. But then in the Easter story, God raises Jesus from the dead because Jesus put himself in the place that you and I can never go to on our own. God raises him from the dead. So this is the challenge from Jesus. If we want to enter into this explanation and receive this offer, we have to die. Something needs to die. Now, if you don't know Jesus and you want to get to know him, want to explore who he is, the entryway is death. There's so much more in the Bible, and come and hang around with us and we'll tell you a bit more about that. Something has to die. Sometimes our pride has to die. Something about our ego has to die. Something about, I'm too busy to do anything about this. I'm constantly amazed at friends. I'm constantly amazed at how much time I will waste with my life staying the same instead of swallowing my pride and dealing with the things that need to be dealt with. And get later on in life and it's too late. Something has to die to receive and know who Jesus is. And by the way, lastly, there's a lot of people here in this room who met Jesus a long time ago. And a lot of you were nodding about the struggles in life. And this is the last thing to share with you. If there is anything you are struggling with right now, where you're at with life, in that place, there's a phrase that the founder of our church movement used to say, a guy called John Wimber. He said, the way in is the way on. In fact, Jesus says this himself. He says, pick up your cross every day. So, brothers and sisters, if you already know Jesus and you're thirsting, it's the same thing. Whatever you're struggling with right now, it's to lay it down and to die. And if we do that, something wonderful happens, this stream of life. Galatians 2, verse 20. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and died for me. Amen.